My name is Lexi, and I am doing my senior project. This is my senior project capstone project for Drexel University, based on creative spaces and creatives in the industry and their bigger impact for the greater community in Philadelphia. So here I have Chad, also known as Who Am I TV, and Chad is a organizer of creative open mics and networking events, as well as, I know you have an academy as well, and you're also an artist yourself. So, can you just go into a little bit about your story on how you got into it? I know you went through the process of being a college student and, finding your voice, finding yourself in the art and creative world. So just get a little bit into that about, how you came about to be where you are, or how your first steps started in the creative world.
Yeah. That's broad. Okay. So, in the creative world, I think that I fell in love with music through growing up in the church. So I would just watch the band, the entire service, be like, this is incredible, how it's moving people. And as I grew older, I just came in contact with people, and I found myself in different studios, and I just fell in love with producing music. And so fast forward until when we got to college, I realized there were a lot of organizations on campus for different initiatives and different styles of people, but none for what I fell in love with, the art, the creative scene. And so I created one called Code. So I went to Rowan University and I created an organization, and we started throwing events on campus. We got access to the art galleries, the Pitt Center, but it all started in my dorm room. So I would bring my equipment to the dorm room and kind of set it up and allow people to perform, and photographers would come out, models would come out, and it was a really great time. And so I was just really lonely on campus, but I knew there were other people around who did what I did and liked what I did, so I kind of just organized that.
Wow, that's great. Now, would you say that more campuses can benefit from having stuff like this for students who are trying to look for a space for themselves to kind of fit in and be able to show their craft?
For sure. I think that one of the biggest conflicts between creatives and education is they often seem opposite each other. Me growing up, I never saw how school will work in favor of my artistic pursuits. And it caused me to grow an animosity towards education, when now in retrospect, looking back, I wish someone would have just told me how the two played together and created those. Yeah, so I just wish that there were spaces in the schools where, it showed kind of how education and the creative scene played together, because it would have made me appreciate my education a lot more. And that helps people thrive through education, because to be honest, education helped me fund my whole career. So yeah, I do think it's very important.
Wow, okay. Can you get into a little bit about how the education did help your career and all of that stuff? I know there are many other people who are currently going to be graduating soon who are probably also looking to kind of find a way to incorporate what they have grasped from education and kind of utilize that afterwards. The big shift between being a graduate and then trying to finally find yourself in the adult world can be very difficult. So, just get into a little bit about that process if you don't mind.
Yeah, so first and maybe most important is structure. So, as a creative, you tend to think that things come to you haphazardly and you should do things when you're inspired, but school kind of shows you a different way, which is no, tests are here, you have to study to get that. So I think that the structure of school really helped me thrive as a creative. Secondly, the network, the people that I met in school have later put me on bills to perform at schools. I've met nonprofit owners, I've met people who worked in labels, I've met future podcasters, and what started out as a small community really turned into a really huge reach for my creative career. And then lastly, another very important one is setting yourself up to finance your career, because entertainment and creativity is one of those things where whether or not you're trying to monetize it, that's up to you. But if you are, it's not like a job where you do the work and you get paid. It's more like momentum. You do a lot of free work until it flips into monetization. So in order to be able to do that free work, you have to support yourself and be able to put money into it. And in the beginning. So I think those three things.
That's very nice. You know, take these tips with ease because, you know, not many people can really understand that, you know, you really do have to try to put yourself out there in order to really get what you want sometimes. And it can be hard for other people. But I do know that you have a Creators Academy that you offer. And, you know, it's a 6-step demand course I saw on there. So, you know, for creators trying to establish their business, you know, how would this help to progress the small artistry community? I mean, those who are small artists trying to up and come and start themselves and establish themselves. How has this program, or how do you hope for this program to progress that community?
Yeah, so the industry has done a major shift. All industries, I'm gonna speak to music, but know that this applies to any industry, creative or not, right? With the advent of like social media and these new technologies, we no longer have to go through a distributor to get products and to get ideas and to get creative things to the masses. And so that happened. I'm 27, which is crazy even saying that out loud. I just turned 27, but that happened, like the internet and cell phones and things. I was probably like 8 to 12 when this whole thing happened, and it was a major shift. And so oftentimes people learn the traditional ways of progressing their career without understanding that, hey, if I just take my ideas and package it in a way that people understand clearly, the people who like it will gather around it and they'll want to buy things from you. Like they will actually, it's not even about you selling it, like they will be inspired to want to take product or services from you.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you know, we always think that mainstream is something that's, you know, very much what will help to make us the most money, this, that, and the third, but it's not really the most main thing. I mean, from your perspective, how do you think that other companies or other spaces can really help to kind of utilize the fact that we are our own brand and it's not so much as to the platforms that we have? How do you think that we can kind of progress and change the perspective that is out there already in the narrative of creative world or the creative industry?
I mean, it's beautiful because it's one of the best times as a creative, because it's like, how to answer your question specifically, stop trying to conform to what you think will be popular, because there's no more standard for what's popular. You can just put it out and people who resonate with you will find it.
Right.
So to build your brand, you have to be your brand and stop trying to be other people's brands. I hope that was clear.
No, that's very clear. And honestly, it's great that we're here in Rec, because I think also Will wrote something about that, about, you know, creatives are their own brand. So it's very great to keep hearing that, and also that it's continuously trying to be impacted into other people and their message, you know. But I do know that you have your open mic and networking events, so let's start talking about that a little bit. So you have these once a month. I've been to a few of them myself, and you know, these consist of artist lineups. People kind of register to reserve a spot for themselves to be able to perform or show their piece. And then there's also, I know you have a gap or a leeway where people can kind of sign up last minute. So in the beginning, how were you able to plan something out like this where it became a reoccurring event where people kind of are showing up regularly? Because I know you have a lot of faces that come there pretty often, and it's become a space where people have kind of associated themselves with this group and community. So how were you able to plan this out to become something where it became a small community within itself?
Yeah, so like the event came from a real problem that I faced in my life, which was like I would go out to events and there were just certain things that made me a little bit uncomfortable. And that's fine, but like certain events the music would be too loud. Something simple like the music's way too loud, I can't network or talk to anyone. I didn't really meet anyone because I couldn't hear myself. Or there was no art that had purpose, and I'm more of a thinker and I like to have really deep discussions. So all of these problems I would have as I went out, I just decided, hey, I'm gonna create an event that would be perfect for me. And I think that the reason why there's so many familiar faces is because there are a lot of people who have felt how I've felt in one way or another. And so it's like when you walk into a space and it feels like home, and there's just people who you're going to meet that will be like lifelong friends, and it feels like, man, I feel like I've known you for a long time. There's not a lot of spaces like that for people, and so that's why I think people come back.
Yeah, wow. And I also know that you have this really special thing where I've been to them before, where your sister, I know she's a singer, and she performs gospel songs and pieces, and it's almost like a praise and worship at the end where everyone kind of comes together, and whether they're religious or not, everyone's kind of there, they're feeling the music. So how do you think moments like this can really impact these kind of events, or people in particular that are coming to these events that are seeking something special?
Yeah, man, I pride myself in being a space where whatever you connect to religiously or spiritually, it doesn't matter. It's not one of those spaces where we divide off of really anything. Mm-hmm. And so I think the beauty in that is it gives people the opportunity to express their spirituality out loud. And no matter what it is, I think we all have a common understanding of we're trying to reach a higher self. We're trying to reach what we understand God to be. And I think that when you remove the need to be boxed in order to fit into a specific style of church or a specific style of worship, we actually get to connect with each other and connect with God. And I think that's a beautiful space because, again, it's not out there. Even though there are churches and establishments, unfortunately they don't always provide that safe space for people who are still figuring out, or people of different ideologies.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, being someone who grew up in the church myself, there are some times where you do struggle, where you're like, well, do I want to continue down this path? Do I not? How do I continue my faith? Is my faith strong enough? You have all these questions in your head, and sometimes you do tend to drift. But being able to find spaces where you can kind of combine everything that you are passionate about and your faith can also grow, that is something that's very beautiful. I mean, how do you hope for the future where we can have more creatives, more artists kind of trying to establish a message within being able to build community, help people grow, help people find their way, and guide people to kind of go in the direction that they're hoping to achieve?
I think anyone who's not doing that will die out creatively, of course, in the next probably 30 years. I think that goes back to social media, how we can connect directly with people. Prior to this era that we're in, what was popular is what was shown to us, because there were only TV, radio, and any other outlet that you think. There were only a limited amount of outlets, so they guided what was popular. But then when you finally create a scene where you can see the real and the fake next to each other, everything starts to look different. Yeah. And if you continue to just portray this persona that's not real, then there's a bunch of authentic artists, you'll just fade out. People won't like it. They'll feel the difference.
Yeah, wow. I definitely agree. I mean, times have definitely changed since when music first started, I mean, how do you think that more artists and creatives can incorporate authenticity? And how do you think that authenticity makes an impact in the greater community to help people to find what they think is true to themselves?
That's a great question. So my artist name is Who Am I? And the process of me changing my name to that, it came from a really dark space where I was in college, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I was skipping class, and I would just find myself in Barnes and Nobles, and I would just start journaling. And from me learning more about myself, I feel like it created a new creative being out of me, so much so that I had to change my name. And I wanted to represent this journey. And so to answer your question, I think that you have to go on a self-discovery journey, because the world gives you so many false selves that you adopt. So in order to connect to your authentic self, in order to create from that place, you have to find it first. So it's unlearning what the world gives you and really creating that person that you want to be.
Wow, yeah. I do think there are definitely a lot of habits that we're taught in the world, especially the education system, that we do kind of need to unlearn. So that is a very impactful message in a way, and honestly your story, I'm sure, can ring true to a lot of people who are struggling. The education system and just the system and economy in general, can be very boxing, and people can feel trapped, So I mean, how do you intend to kind of utilize your music, your message, to kind of help people break out of their shell and to kind of help them just put their foot out the door and just say, hey, I want to do me, and I want to do me authentically, and I don't care what other people think.
I try in every way God bless me to. So like first and foremost, the foundation of what I do is like my music. And I think that when you either see me perform or you hear my music, you can hear the authenticity. And like I believe my purpose musically is to like let go of my ego and just let everything that I'm going through out on the track, so that if someone is listening and say, well, if he can express that, so can I. The events is like a step further, which is like, no, I actually want to help facilitate you actually stepping out of your shell and actually becoming the person you are. So when you see me do it, and then you see this person do it, and this creative do it, and then you see the person who this is their first open mic and they never did it before, but they just did it, it creates a safe space for you to do it too. And any other, thing that God blesses me with creatively, I just try to use it to help people break out of that shell.
That's great. That's great. Now, I do kind of want to ask you, what do you have in store for the future? With your events, with your academy, is there anything else that you think that you would want to utilize to help kind of continue this message that you're trying to push out to the world?
Yeah, I have a lot of plans, if that's what you're asking me. So I just dropped an album called Prayer Pack. That's kind of been my thing right now. My discussions about my faith, about my creative journey, and I think it's helped a lot of people so far. Continuing the events, for sure, creating opportunities for artists to create and become closer to their like higher selves. The courses are important to me because I'm like very familiar with education. So my dad's a pastor, my mom's a teacher. So like the major establishments in the world, like I grew up very familiar with it. And I see that there are holes inside of education that needs to be filled. And education's a beautiful thing. I just want to give my part to it. I think that's pretty much everything. The merch, I believe you should wear your purpose. I like to give people, I call it the uniform for creativity. I'm forgetting something, but I think those things should be enough for me.
No, that's completely fine.
Yeah.
That's completely fine. And I do want to ask, what is some advice that you would give to someone who is young and trying to get their foot out there, maybe wanting to start a brand for themselves? What is some advice that you would tell them to kind of, get out of their head and give them some encouraging words to push forward and just do it? What advice would you give to someone, Think of someone who's young, who's graduating in their early 20s and trying to really just say, hey, like I really want to do this, but I don't know how.
What you're trying to do may not seem logical to people around you, people that love you. That's where it hurts the most. But there's something inside of you that is new to the world, and you will be able to create a space for other people who feel alone in the sense that you do. That's why it's inside of you to create. 1 and 2, everything that you need to create that is available to you. No matter what setbacks you go through in life, be it financially, mental health, people not in your corner, there's always a way, there's always a person, there's always a resource for you to get to bring it to life. And so from that, it's just about your willpower and do you believe in yourself enough? So I would say that, yeah.
Wow, that's a great piece of advice. Wow. So, before we end off, I always like to ask a little fun question for everyone, just to kind of narrow it down and kind of be like, okay, let me pick your brain a little bit. So I wanted to ask you, what is an impactful song that you listen to in your life that has really helped you grow as a person, that you think stuck with you the most, that you probably still listen to? It could be a church hymn, it can be a song you've heard on the radio, it could be anything. And what was the message that really stuck with you from that song?
Weirdly enough, I don't think anyone will know it unless you're like an OG Mali Music fan. But there's this song by Mali Music, gospel artist, and it's called Conqueror. It's from his first album.
Yes.
And it's just like, I'm more than a conqueror. And the beat, the rhythm of that song, it feels like war music.
Yeah.
And anytime I feel like I'm going through like a mental distress, I just put it on. It reminds me like the battle is not flesh and blood. Like it's a spiritual battle I'm going through, and it just lock in. and it just so nostalgic to me, man. It just gets me in the zone.
Wow, that's amazing. And I do know that song,
Oh, wow.
so it is a good song, and I do know what you mean by the music. So yes, that is great. Wow, I was not expecting you to say that song.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you so much, Chad, for being on this podcast with me, this episode for my Creative Capstone Project, once again for Drexel University. This is Lexi, and this is Chad, and I'm not sure if you have any closing remarks you wanted to say or anything else that you wanted to maybe shout out for your brand, but thank you so much for being on this podcast with me, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. She needs to get an A for this project. Feels good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.